We don't know whether the Department of Justice will actually release all the files or if they'll be tied up in investigations, specifically investigations Trump orders to keep them tied up in investigations. And that is where things will get interesting.
This has been a week of absolute disgrace and shame in the nation's capital as Donald Trump honored and embraced his business partner, the homicidal crown prince of Saudi Arabia, Mohammed bin Salman.
Jimmy Kimmel and Jamie Raskin didn't set out to stage a demolition. Yet they effortlessly turned Trump's latest moment into a full-scale spectacle of confusion and comedic unraveling. One minute he's talking. The next he's metaphorically tripping over his own script as they break down every wobble with razor-sharp clarity. If watching chaos gracefully escorted offstage sounds satisfying, you're exactly where you should be.
Bill now goes to the White House, which means Trump's going to have to sign it. The goal was to have the bill passed by such a large margin that Trump can't put his little orange thumb on the scale and give it the old Cheeto veto. But make no mistake, this isn't over. He's not giving up easy. If anyone thinks...
Are somehow soft on crime, this is an odd proposition to me, given that Democratic-led cities today are now driving an historic nationwide decrease in crime, especially homicide and violent crime, following a dramatic spike in those categories under the first Trump administration.
If you're enjoying this video, okay? Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon. The chaos kicked off with Trump's latest grand performance, one of those. Political stunts that strutted in expecting Shakespeare, but landed closer to an unedited blooper reel. His big moment tried to project authority, yet flickered like a faulty bulb in a bargain shop. Kimmel notes that while the confidence was loud and theatrical, the logic was somewhere in the back row. Nervously whispering for help.
Will we have the original documents, or is Trump going to pull a Taylor Swift and give us the Epstein files, Donnie's version of the document? We might not ever know. Trump claims this whole thing is a Democrat hoax, and the reason he refused to sign an executive order to release the files months ago is because it's a waste of time. And that's the thing about Donald Trump. This is not a man who wastes time on nonsense.
We're going to have a UFC fight. Think of this on the grounds of the White House.
This is an executive order relating to the use of paper straws.
Changing the name of the Gulf of Mexico to the Gulf of America.
Nothing highlighted the unraveling more than his attempt to justify this latest strategy, plan held together by enthusiasm, tape, and pure imagination. It wobbled with confidence, like a bridge sketched by someone who skipped the engineering class entirely. Jaime kept steering the moment into sharp, comedic detours, while Trump turned serious messaging into the political equivalent of wrestling a folding chair. And the more he insisted it all made sense, the funnier the confusion became.
Even in this degraded administration, a week of absolute moral and ethical collapse, when an American reporter posed the question about what would be done with respect to the vicious assassination of Jamal Khashoggi, Donald Trump reprimanded her for her insubordination as if she were a member of the U.S. Armed Forces.
Then came the wave of public reactions, spinning faster than anyone could track, as if the entire political world tripped over the same misplaced step. Kimmel broke down how people scrambled to decode Trump's latest pivot, only to realize there was nothing to decode to deceive, a whirlwind of improvised declarations. In the end, the confusion became the message. K-Sousley transformed into comedy.
Trump, because some of his most loyal footlickers betrayed him. Lauren Boebert, Marge Green, even the certifiable Nancy Mace jumped ship on this one, and now she's bending over backwards to try to win him back.
My understanding, it was Donald Trump who came forward. He banned him from Mar-a-Lago. He allegedly, from that email, that he did sit down with authorities, or at least Epstein believed that he did and may have been a whistleblower. And if he did, thank God for Donald Trump. I don't know that there's anything this man cannot do in this country.
Trump's detours piled up like an overstuffed suitcase refusing to zip. One moment he marched in with confidence. The next, he drifted into mental alleyways that barely connected to his point. His justifications multiplied wildly, bending into shapes physics would never approve. Jaime noted how the entire spectacle drifted between theatrical ambition and raw, unfiltered chaos, practically begging for commentary with every wobble.
Well, the News and Observer is correct. Republicans from the White House to Congress to the state houses are systematically undermining public safety in communities across America with what I would call gangster state policies, while claiming that Democrats are to blame. Well, what's really going on? Let's start with the administration's first day in office. How about that? On the first day, Donald Trump pardoned nearly 1,600 January 6th insurrectionists, people who either pled guilty or were convicted beyond a reasonable doubt by a jury of their peers for hundreds and hundreds of crimes, including hundreds who violently attacked Capitol Police officers, Metropolitan Police Department officers, Montgomery County, Maryland police officers from Virginia.
Jimmy Kimmel jumped in by magnifying the chaos, zooming in on every contradictory twist in Trump's delivery. Each attempt at looking composed only made the stumbles brighter. Like a spotlight tracking a performer who keeps dropping props, he swears he's juggling perfectly. Kimmel's breakdown of the tangled reasoning added a fresh layer of humor, transforming the political misfire into something that felt like a high-budget sitcom scene spiraling off script. The drama was huge, but the logic had clearly taken the day off. Jaime Raskin added to the spectacle by peeling back the layers behind Trump's frantic attempts at course correction. Instead of smoothing anything out, Trump's responses scattered wildly, like confetti shot from a cannon that somehow fired sideways. Kimmel then shifted attention to the reactions bubbling among Trump's allies, tried so desperately to maintain composure that their synchronized nodding began to resemble a rehearsed comedy routine. They hovered close enough to appear supportive, yet stayed just far enough away. To avoid being blamed for the swirling confusion, their expressions flickered constantly between forced confidence and quiet existential dread, like people trying to smile through a buffet disaster unfolding in real time. The comedic tension alone could have fueled an entire television season.
Crisis, quality of living and quality of life, the tariffs, protecting women and kids, protecting women in sports, all the things, there's nothing he can't do.
Except for a sit-up. I wonder which cult Nancy joined and when the Netflix documentary about it is coming out, because Nancy's making the rounds on all the channels Trump pleasures himself to try to get back in his good graces, but also...
Raskin steered the roast straight into Trump's financial claims, a treasure map so creatively drawn that even imaginary pirates would have asked for directions. The numbers twisted themselves into abstract shapes mathematicians would politely refuse to solve. The entire presentation sparkled with wishful thinking layered over questionable math, turning what should have been fiscal clarity into an abstract art exhibit of accounting. Reality tried to appear now and then, only to be pushed aside by yet another fantastical claim. Kimmel then zeroed in on Trump's habit of rebranding his political losses as invisible victories that only he could see. It was like watching someone proudly unveil an empty trophy case while insisting it overflowed with awards. Raskin followed up by diving into the digital storm of Trump's social media presence, where every message launched with the urgency of an alarm but landed like an accidental confession. Each outburst spun itself into new chaos before anyone could finish absorbing the last one. Watching the pattern unfold felt like tracking a runaway tire rolling downhill. Predictable, frantic, and completely committed to its own trajectory. The posts created a weather system of their own, sweeping across the internet with dramatic flair and absolutely no structural stability.
Jamal Khashoggi was an American journalist, and he wrote for the Washington Post. He was a critic of the brutal human rights violations and repression taking place in Saudi Arabia. And when he was traveling in Istanbul, Turkey, he was abducted by 17 members of Mohammed bin Salman's security team. He was strangled, and then he was drawn and quartered, dismembered, assassinated by Saudi Arabia. And this is what our president describes in the compressed formulation of things happen.
Kimmel circled back to Trump's international commentary, which aimed for a statesman-like authority, but arrived sounding more like amateur poetry performed at a small-town talent show. The gap between intention and execution widened with every sentence. What began as diplomatic statements swerved abruptly into comedic detours, leaving observers unsure whether they were witnessing foreign policy analysis or an experimental theater audition. Nothing landed where he aimed. Ideas appeared, vanished, then reappeared in new packaging, as if each concept was still auditioning for a role it wasn't sure it wanted. None stayed long enough to resemble an actual plan. Every proposal felt like it had been drafted while sprinting up a staircase, breathlessly assembled in mid-dash stride. His speeches drifted across topics with the aimlessness of a tourist, wandering foreign streets without a map. One moment he lingered in nostalgia, the next he leaped into frustration, and then veered into whatever sudden thought flashed across his mind. The rhythm mirrored a documentary narrated by someone flipping randomly through pages of an unfamiliar diary. And yet, with every unexpected turn, the entertainment value only climbed higher. The unpredictability didn't clarify anything, but it certainly made the spectacle unforgettable.
Anyone thinks he's going to release all the Epstein files, I've got a beautiful East Wing of the White House to sell you. Even after an almost unanimous vote by Congress, Trump's cronies in the Department of Justice still have the power to withhold information to protect ongoing investigations, to protect innocent people, or for reasons of national security.
Raskin turned toward the gathering legal storm clouds, each one swelling with dramatic flair like a soap opera desperately trying to top its last episode. The overlapping issues stacked into a mound of complications, so heavy it felt like you'd need a forklift just to sort through them. Every new development landed directly on top of the previous one, forming a towering monument to disorder. The unfolding saga practically begged for theme music and a weekly previously on. Recap.Kimmel, followed by highlighting Trump's impulsive decisions. Choices made with the speed and randomness of someone jabbing elevator buttons without looking. The aftermath of each choice always arrived louder, messier, and far more chaotic than the decision that started it. Raskin then zoomed in on the contradictions, woven into Trump's statements, piling up like a Jenga tower on the verge of collapse. Each fresh comment contradicted something sitting just inches away, creating a teetering structure supported only by theatrical confidence. Audiences tried valiantly to track the logic, but the logic had already packed its bags and left the building by the time the contradictions settled. The tower had grown so tall, it practically wrote its own punchlines, unintentionally hilarious, wildly unstable, and impossible to ignore.
Donald Trump incited according to a bipartisan vote of the House of Representatives, which 57 of 100 senators voted to convict him on, the most widespread bipartisan vote in the history of presidential impeachments. And he was that wounded, that disfigured, that incapacitated. He could no longer serve. He had to leave his dream job and is now living on a fraction of what his income was before because of that violence.
Kimmel returned to Trump's attempts at public reassurance, which landed with the precision of a magician performing a disappearing act while making the rabbit nervous. Instead of calming concerns, each dramatic delivery amplified every worry, turning what should have been soothing into a spectacle of anxious energy. Every reassurance unfolded with the grace of a broken umbrella in a windstorm outward. It's fragile yet oddly captivating in its failure. The result was almost endearing. It's a chaotic charm that left viewers both bewildered and entertained. Raskin shifted focus to Trump's interactions with his advisors, which resembled a symphony of overlapping voices and mismatched strategies, all playing at once like instruments tuning in a crowded orchestra pit. Messages collided mid-air, sparking confusion that traveled faster than any coherent guidance. The workspace buzzed with frantic energy, like a brainstorming session run by people each following a different instruction manual. Charts twisted, numbers danced, and explanations floated freely into fantasy territory. Untethered from reality, throughout it all, a shimmering layer of creative confidence dominated the room, overshadowing any practical credibility. Comedy took center stage and refused to step aside. Every misstep, every contradictory statement, every impulsive decision fed into a performance that was chaotic, unpredictable, and hilariously unavoidable. It was less about strategy and more about spectacle, with laughter as the only consistent outcome.
Something's fishy. Trump rolled over faster than that dog Ghislaine Maxwell gets to play with in her country club prison. That's the other thing that's not getting enough attention. Ghislaine Maxwell, Epstein's wing woman, she had that meeting with Trump's deputy attorney general and former personal lawyer over the summer, and then coincidentally got moved right out of regular prison and into the kind of prison Felicity Huffman was in for getting her kid into college.
Raskin chased after Trump's rushed policy rollouts, which often seemed drafted mid-stride on the way to the podium. Execution collapsed upon contact with reality, dissolving faster than cotton candy in water. Each rollout came wrapped in theatrical energy, but lasted only long enough for someone to ask what the plan actually was. Practicality had no chance. Kimmel seized on Trump's self-ordered praise. It's delivered with the certainty of a man handing himself a medal for simply showing up. Every victory lap floated on a cloud of imaginary achievements, dazzling in presentation, but hollow in substance. The spectacle sparkled with over-the-top confidence, as if reality were optional. It was theater without props, and somehow that made it even funnier. Raskin reflected on Trump's responses to criticism, which ricocheted unpredictably like a pinball chasing bonus points. Instead of addressing the issue, each reaction careened into a new direction, producing waves of confusion. These dramatic pivots spun so fast they created their own comedic rhythm. And every rebuttal only added to the chaos. Kimmel circled back to Trump's outdated talking points, dragged onto the stage like antiques being dusted off for the 50th time. They were relics, posing as fresh insight. Meanwhile, Raskin highlighted the cracks in Trump's media strategy, which unfolded like tightly wrapped packages bursting open on arrival. Attempts to steer the narrative often spiraled into fresh complications before the ink even dried. Headlines raced ahead of any attempt at cleanup, and the spectacle never lingered long enough to stabilize. The overall picture was one of relentless theatricality. Where performance outweighed substance, chaos became rhythm. And each moment seemed designed to dazzle while revealing cracks just beneath the glittering surface. In this theater, reality was optional, but the entertainment value was undeniable.
Now we have a conclusion in the ethics process and a series of findings that George Santos had stolen people's money, used it for vacations to go to Las Vegas, used it for Botox, used it for personal purposes. Now, where did he get the idea that you can lie to the public about significant things and cheat and steal? Got it from Donald Trump, who's the leader of their party. So I just want to know if they're going to use the George Santos test for Donald.
Kimmel zeroed in on Trump's internal contradictions, which multiplied like a runaway science experiment. Statements collided and battled for dominance, leaving audiences stranded in the middle of mismatched conclusions. The contradictions piled up, forming their own comedic monument to each new twist, adding another layer of absurdity that delighted observers. Raskin highlighted Trump's habit of reinventing past events, reshaping them into stories that resembled fiction more than memory. Facts bent, stretched, and curved until they no longer recognized themselves, transforming retellings into something more akin to fantasy novels than historical accounts. Every revision amplified the spectacle, creating layers of humor that compounded with each retelling. What might have been mundane events became surreal narratives, captivating precisely because of their implausibility. Kimmel then dissected Trump's motivational attempts, which landed with all the grace of a balloon deflating mid-celebration. Intended to inspire, these moments instead veered into pure entertainment, leaving audiences equal parts bemused and amused. The absurdity rose like steam from a boiling pot, thickening with each attempt at self-aggrandizement. Every speech and gesture seemed to carry its own unintended punchline, providing a theater of comedy without a script. Trump's unpredictable temperament became a central stage for humor. Emotions shifted at the pace of a malfunctioning weather app during a storm, confidence flipping to outrage. Outrage spiraling into triumph, and triumph collapsing back into confusion, all without warning. Spectators were swept along a dizzying emotional roller coaster, where the spectacle's entertainment value far outstripped any intended political messaging. Raskin concluded the sequence with Trump's final cascade of errors, stacked precariously like a tower of mismatched books. Each misstep toppled into the next, producing a domino effect worthy of slow-motion replay. What might have been small errors on their own coalesced into a theatrical crescendo, with each new blunder feeding the comedic momentum. The saga practically begged for continuation, inviting audiences to watch, laugh, and anticipate the next improbable twist. In the end, the combination of contradictions, invented histories, motivational flops, and emotional unpredictability created a self-sustaining spectacle. It was chaotic yet mesmerizing, absurd yet compelling, a theater where reality was optional and humor reigned supreme. Every misstep, twist, and contradiction only added to the narrative's charm, leaving audiences entertained and exasperated in equal measure.